Did you hit the button?
I did. You gonna do the intro?
Shalom, Patreon.
Excuse me.
I'm here with Bear of Bear Independent.
Hi. What show are we on today? Homesteadingtipswithhami.com?
No.
No?
No, we're on Bear Independent.
Oh, okay. It's hard to tell nowadays. Everybody's got a damn channel. It's
Yeah,
It's like a prerequisite to be part of the tribe. What's your YouTube channel?
almost. Yeah.
Jason Cheney said, given the choice, would you spend the funds on solar to go completely off-grid and have to take a break from stacking preps? Or spend the funds continuing to stack it to the rafters? It's a question I'm currently fighting with myself over. I just don't feel like I'm prepared enough. I've pretty well covered my bases for about 18 months of food and water for 3 people. Got commo, medical, getting trained in Waco, Texas, doing Responder 1, 2, and 3 this December, security, etc. I've also got livestock and finally reached the point of producing over half of my food here. Unfortunately, I've got this question all twisted up in my head and could use an objective opinion. So, Exhibit A. Boom. What are we doing right here in the area formerly known as the front sheep pen?
We are burning cedar trees that we had an abundance of in this area
Why?
so that we can have sunlight because we want to implement our solar, and you know, it's one of those things, you gotta have sunlight for solar.
True.
True.
Doesn't work real good without it.
Without it. So we are making more sunlight.
It's a fairly labor-intensive process.
It is, yeah, because cedars are a pain in the butt.
So, we did the cost-benefit analysis as well, kind of like you're doing right now. And it's like, all right, food, check. Security, check. Medical, check. Commo, check. Right? And you start getting to the point, it's like vehicles, check. Right? Livestock, check. Right? It's like, all right, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Because
What's next?
Right. And that's a good way to look at it, is what's next, right? Because preparedness is a way of life for us. It's not a box checker mentality. Like, otherwise I would have stopped at Baofangs.
Right.
You know. I would have stopped at 3-month prepper pantry. Oh, we're good. You know, back to normal everyday life. Well,
Right.
preparedness is normal everyday life for us. And so we decided, we've known for a long time we were going to do solar, but we've only probably in the last 6 months started putting a fine point on what does doing solar look like.
Right.
And it looks like, pull out all of those little rectangular green pieces of paper that you got and set them on fire. Gosh dang.
Yeah.
Old man complaining about his 401k again. But gosh dang, it's expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive, and that comes back to understanding your usage. But for us, it's gonna be expensive. It's been expensive thus far. We have the panels and the batteries, and we are still in process of getting the charge controllers and the inverters, and I have to upgrade the service entry to my home, because when this home was built, it was built with a 100 amp service drop, and I really need a minimum of 200 just to run the house and to backfeed the solar with. So you've got the service entry equipment, and then all of the subsurface electrical to tie the solar array back to the house. So it's involved, it's expensive, it's gonna be a thing. And so we did the cost benefit analysis, and we decided to do that. We priced out a system to meet all of our needs currently based upon the kilowatt hours that we use. And so some super basic math, right? The term watt, like how much is a watt, right? Watts are amps times volts. And so if you had something that was 1,000 watts, used 1,000 watts of electricity, That would be something that's 120 volts, 110, right? You know, everybody's, at least in America, North America, is familiar with 110, right? So you have something that's 110 and it pulls 9 amps. That's 990 watts or 1,000 watts. That's how that works, okay? A kilowatt is simply 1,000 watts. Kilo for 1,000, watt for watt. So kilowatts, 1,000 watts. So things are rated in kilowatts, generally speaking, in solar. And then a kilowatt hour is if it's how many kilowatts in an hour are you consuming in that period of time. So if you had a 1,000-watt microwave and you ran it for an hour, that's a kilowatt hour. If you have a 1,000-watt microwave and you run it for 15 minutes, that's 1/4 of a kilowatt hour, because it's 1/4 of an hour. If you have 5,000 watts of draw that you run for an hour, that's 5 kilowatt hours. You run that same 5,000 for 15 minutes, that's 1.25 kilowatt hours. And so basic math there of understanding how that works. And then there's a couple other numbers that one has to consider. One is, how big of an array are you going to put up? And what's that array rated to? Like, what's the efficiency of the array, and how many sun hours do you get? How many hours is that thing going to be in the sun? Because that matters. Because if the panels are dark, they don't make any electricity.
Right.
As California and Germany are finding out right now. Let's make everything solar. Oh crap, the sun's not out. We're done for. So we did the math. In order to meet our current utilization, you ready for big ugly numbers? We would need a 32 kilowatt, 32,000 watt solar array, living with all the mod cons, right? The freezers, the refrigerators. We have electric heat in our house. Oh my gosh, why?
Yeah, so our house, when originally built, is all electric.
Full electric.
Everything. Everything. Which is not ideal because, power goes out. And
Yep.
we've had it before where power pole snapped and we were without power for a week. Well, that means for us, no water, no cooking, no heat or air, no nothing.
No laundry.
No nothing. So that for us was like kind of the big slap in the face on, you guys have all the food, all the firearms, all the we have all the things, but this is your weak point.
Yep.
And so that's been our big push, is fixing that weak point so that it's not all electric.
And so we started with the path of least resistance. Got a 10K dual fuel generator. Wired that into the house. It'll run the house. 50 amp. It won't run everything in the house at the same time because
Right.
it's 50 amp, 240, and it'll run on propane or gasoline. And got the 300 gallon propane tank filled up and plumbed to be able to, push start the generator. It'll make power. Cool. The thing is, that 300 gallon tank round the clock, that's about 10 days of power round the clock. But we had the tank, and I was like, well, we could probably use that tank. So that scratched that itch. That checked that box for a week and a half, right?
Right.
Then we've got small scale solar for other stuff, the Jackery and other stuff for charging batteries or running lights or whatever. But we knew that we needed a large scale solar array to do what we want to do. Looked at wind, almost got a wind turbine from a brother here. That ended up not working out. If there's one thing really with electricity I'm comfortable with, it's wind.
You're right.
I know wind like the back of my hand. Challenge is, you want to be a minimum of 30 feet above the nearest obstruction within 500 foot of the tower. So that means putting up a minimum of a 100-foot tower out here. And even then, eastern Oklahoma is not known for its wind resource.
No.
Central and western Oklahoma for sure. That's why you see utility scale wind turbines there. But here, sometimes the breeze kicks up like it just did, but there's lots of times, especially in the heat of the summer, where it's just dead.
It's still air.
And then that comes back to battery capacity. So you need to have enough batteries based upon what your wind resource is or what your solar hours are to keep the battery fully topped off so that overnight, at a minimum overnight, your stuff doesn't turn off, right? So you can start recharging the next day. Ideally, you should be able to go several days, if not a week, maybe more, with no sunshine and still be able to work off your batteries. So getting back to that 32 kilowatt array of solar, what we realized was, all right, because the house was wired where everything's electric, we have to be making some changes. So one of which is the wood stove, right? We'll be putting in the wood stove before winter gets here.
Right. Yeah, I mean, first was the mini split.
Yep.
So we got a mini split that does a fabulous job of cooling the majority of our house.
Yep.
And in putting that in, we were able to get rid of like 4 window units.
Yeah. So we had a lot of window units.
A lot of window units.
Which are not efficient.
No. And so that was the first step. And then the second step is, because I would prefer, because they still use electric to heat much more efficiently than like baseboard heaters or, portable space heaters. But, we're surrounded by trees.
Yep.
And there was at one time a wood stove in our house that when they did the remodeling that they did,
The previous owners,
they decided to take that out, but they still kept it. So we are still in ownership of that wood stove. We just have to get it back inside the house and repiped.
Yep.
So yeah.
Go.
No, well.
Yes, we're actually this weird in real life too.
We're probably weirder.
Yeah, that's accurate. So, wood stove mini split.
Yes.
Also looking at like our stove and our hot water heater are electric. And so we are going to be converting those over to propane.
Correct.
And then you get the new stove that you want.
Yes.
We get a much lower operating cost on both of those appliances, and we remove them from the electrical load calculation because they're not electric.
Right.
I don't really care for an electric stove either, but it's really hard to complain. Like Pharaoh had his dinner cooked over fire. No,
I mean it's what came with the house. It's how the house was set up. Like, it's worked. I'm not gonna, not be happy that we didn't have a stove and a hot water heater, but just long-term sustainability, it's much better to diversify, because we would still be able to semi-cook on our wood stove. Like, it's not a cooking stove, but it gets hot enough that you could cook on it if needed.
Well, it's the same stove that's in Grandma's house.
Right.
And when we first moved here, we were all living in Grandma's house without electricity. And it was winter, February. And we 100% did cook on that wood stove, including heating water and making coffee and tea and all hot cocoa and all that stuff. So it's quite doable. Throws a lot of heat.
Yeah.
But all that to say, so doing the cost-benefit analysis here, to say nothing of the resiliency that having a wood stove provides, right? Because we have lots of wood. and the resiliency of having a low amperage, low draw mini split, right? And all the other, the stove and the hot water heater and all that. It costs significantly less in the solar array.
Right.
So we needed a 32 kilowatt array, 32,000 watts in order to power the entire home. Well, now by making those changes, a 16 kilowatt will be more than enough. And so if you look at the cost difference between a 16 kilowatt and a 32 kilowatt, they're half, literally half.
Right.
And so we're actually saving money by getting the new stove, getting the mini split, getting the hot water heater, installing the wood stove, doing all these things that are good for preparedness sake anyway. We're saving money on the solar array by greatly reducing the load that's going to be on our electrical system in the house.
Right.
16 kilowatts is still a big array, but there's only on average 6.4 solar hours per day where we are. So that thing's only running approximately 6.5 hours a day. So we want, based upon that, we need as much square footage of those panels as we can get. And then those panels don't operate at 100% efficiency either.
Right.
Clean and direct sunlight, maybe 90%, right? And that's clean. It's so dusty out here, give it a day, right? And so there's some upkeep and maintenance with that as well. And of course, we'll be walking you all through the entire installation process when we get that going. But we've done the cost benefit analysis here, and make no mistake, it's tens of thousands of dollars, whether you want the big system or the little system, right? The 16K or the 32K, it's tens of thousands of dollars.
It's an investment.
Yes.
You could probably buy a janky house for what our solar system's going to
Dude,
cost.
I spent more on the batteries for our solar system than I did on my 1-ton truck.
Right. Yeah.
That's not an exaggeration. $18,000 in solar batteries, $17,000 on the truck. So, and also, we're not made of money.
No.
We save,
That's
work.
taking a lot of yeah.
Save, work, and then go. Because the Father didn't give you money so you could look at it in a bank account.
Right.
Right? Especially in the economic climate that we're in and headed to. I'd rather have the infrastructure than have the money in the bank, because at the rate of inflation versus the rate of return, I'm losing money every day as the money's sitting there.
Right.
So invest in tangible assets, including solar. But it's taken a good amount of time, 6 years or 6 months intentionally, and then years before that of just kind of dabbling to get to the point where we were ready to pull the plug, because we're not perfect. This place is not 100% self-sufficient.
No.
But
Hell no.
But when you start looking at the capabilities that we already have, where do you put more money?
Right.
Right? If we're looking to cash out of the system and invest in the homestead, where do you invest that money? And it's like firewood, check. Rifles, check. Like four-wheelers, check. Trucks, check. Commo, check. Agriculture, we're out of room for livestock. Praise Yah, we're out of room for livestock, right? Gardens, check. Like swimming pool, check. Like you check all those boxes, and it doesn't mean you don't improve the existing systems over time, which we're doing. That's a part of maintenance, right? Go see Saw. It's part of mums. So you're constantly improving the existing systems, but when you look at the fragility of the grid and the fact that due to the weakening of the US dollar and an increase in demand and an increase in input costs, electricity, which on average for years, decades, was steady at 10.25 cents per kilowatt hour in the United States of America, which is dumb cheap. 10.25 cents per kilowatt hour in the United States on average. It's gonna go up. It did 1,200% increase overnight in Europe because of this war with Russia. So that means if your power bill was $100 a month, now it's $1,200 a month. So you start looking at rate of return on the investment into a solar system at $1,200 a month. It doesn't take that many months to get back your money out of it and not be connected to that grid in the first place.
Right.
Last thing I'll say is what's called net metering. Net metering means that we produce more power than we consume. And so at certain points during the day, after the batteries top themselves back up, first couple, 3 hours of the day, batteries get topped off. As long as the sun is out, we're making power. Your meter on your house literally starts spinning backwards, because instead of power flowing in from the grid into your system's not producing power, which is flowing back out of your system back up into the grid. Meter spins backwards. To my knowledge, unless it's changed since I was in the wind turbine industry, every state in the union requires the utility company is required to allow you to net meter. They have to let you hook up your system to the grid. What they don't have to do is pay you for the excess energy. A lot of, especially rural co-ops, have a minimum system size in order for them to pay you for the excess, and that minimum system size is 40 kilowatts, which is considerable.
That's a big system.
40 kilowatts, and again, define 40 kilowatts, because a 40 kilowatt solar panel with no sun on it is zero watts. But a 40 kilowatt wind turbine with a 7 mile an hour breeze plus is making a true 40 kilowatts, 42, 44 kilowatts. You know, you get 10 mile an hour breeze, you're making power. So a 40 kilowatt wind turbine that's running at full blast will power 4 homes, 4 modern homes, brick McMansions. That's excess power for your home, your barn, your shop, right? And so now, therefore, they allow you to interconnect that to the grid and net meter. That excess power goes back into the grid, and they pay you for it. They don't pay you retail. If your retail is 10.25 cents per hour, kilowatt hour, that's not what they pay you. They pay you wholesale, because these co-ops are buying power from the energy producers, from the coal plant, natural gas plant, nuclear plant, hydro, wind, solar, whatever, and they're buying it at 3 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour and selling it to you at 10. So they pay you as a wholesaler that 3 or 4 cents per kilowatt hour, not per 10, and so, or not 10 per kilowatt hour. So factor those numbers in when you're doing your ROI, your return on investment. If you're getting paid for net metering, you're not getting paid at retail. You're getting paid at maybe 40% of retail. And so it takes longer. Small scale wind and solar for your home has a pretty horrific ROI, return on investment. If you look at the number of years historically it's taken for those things to pay off monetarily, it takes a long time. Even with an excellent wind resource, you're talking about 7 years. With solar, with an excellent solar resource, 10, 12, maybe 15 years, with a 20-year service life.
Right.
And so you're only spending 5 years in the black. But the real payoff to those systems is that you have resilience if the grid goes down or goes away. And so that's why we've chosen to invest into that portion for the homestead at this point in our preparedness journey. But it was not the first thing we did. We've done a lot of other stuff before we got to that point.
Yeah.
Now, everything we've done ever as human beings, us personally, has been with a reliable electrical grid.
Yeah.
So if that changes, that might change how you prioritize solar in the future. But for us to this point, by and large, I mean, I've spent an entire total, in the last 5 years we've been here, maybe 2 weeks without power.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn reliable. That's more reliable than I am getting up when my alarm clock goes off. Right?
Yeah.
Had one of those mornings this morning where the mattress was stuck to my back. So, so that changes the cost-benefit analysis. If the grid does become truly unreliable, then maybe you do prioritize solar more than other stuff. But for us, it's been a long time coming. And again, it's been a long time of saving and earning and busting our asses to get there. And even though monetarily it makes sense to invest in that, I still hate spending that money, man.
Oh yeah.
I hate it.
It's a big chunk.
It's huge. I'd buy another damn truck.
But we're also looking at it as like retirement. Like there will come a time when
Yep.
you know the money coming in is far less. Like I don't know if we're still going to be doing YouTube when we're 60, 70.
We might not be
you
allowed
know?
to.
May not be allowed to. So we are, for us, that's one of those things that aids in our retirement and the funds that are needed for our livelihoods to continue.
Yeah, and 45 to 55, which neither of us is 45 yet, but 45 to 55 is the statistically speaking, the most productive bracket of years that people have as far as earning is concerned. So it'd be good to get some of these major expenses out of the way now, like
Right.
put a roof on the house, fix the foundation, like that kind of stuff. And then because at some point, and it sneaks up on you, you're old
Yeah.
and you don't work as much anymore.
Right.
And we have people we fellowship with that technically are old, and they're like, damn, my joints feel old, but my brain doesn't. Like,
Right.
I don't feel old. I don't wake up and go, shit, I'm old. And so it is an investment.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to think about. And I didn't take money out of the savings funds that I have for my kids to do this.
Right.
I didn't take money out of the emergency fund. I didn't pull money out of the businesses. I didn't, it's one piece at a time, people. Like diligence and savings and earning, right? I didn't prioritize this so much that everything else fell by the wayside.
Right.
You do what you can when you can with your income. Buy one solar battery every other month for a year.
Right. If that's what you can do.
Right. And then boom, you have that portion of the solar setup that you're gonna need. And then, damn, have you seen inverters? The good ones are $5,000 a piece. Okay, well, bust your ass, and then the following year, buy 2 inverters.
Right.
Right. And so, piece it together. And this is not to. I'll end with this. This is not to say you can't go to Harbor Freight and put a system together for $1,000 that'll suit a lot of people's needs, or buy a Jackery or a Blue Eddy or a whatever the hell all the other ones are.
Right.
Energy or sure, go for it. But the longevity of those systems is yet to be seen. And if, like I said, I know wind like the palm of my hand. I know utility scale solar pretty damn well as well. And what I'm looking to do is to build a damn near utility scale solar array on our property that will meet all of our current and future utility needs on property as well. Because I got a team room, I got an outhouse, I got a house, I got a gazebo, I got a cabin in the cove I want to build. And I have wired this entire place subsurface so that one array will be able to power all of those things. And I did that 2 years ago. Right?
Yep.
Planning comes back to planning. So, all right. That ought to do it for the day. I think that answered his question.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Do solar. You're squared away. I mean, if you think you are squared away in the things that you need to be squared away in, then yes, work towards the next thing.
Yep.
And once you have that next thing completed, if there's another thing you need to work towards, or if you need to revisit those original preps and work towards those again, do that. But from the sound of it, you sound pretty squared away. And so, yeah, I would suggest moving on to the next thing.
Last thing I'll say. No, because it made me think, because I get this question all the time. Should I empty out my savings, cash in my 401k, go all in with all my chips? I don't know what you should do, because I'm not you. I don't understand your context. I don't know how many earning years you have left. I don't know what your costs are and what your revenue is. I don't know that, right? That's not my job. But I do know this. I've always historically been a really good earner. That's not been my issue. Savings has been my issue, right?
Yeah.
And I've really worked towards being a good saver as well as a good earner. I don't blow everything that's in my bank account.
No.
Never. If I'm approaching 40 or 50% of what's in savings to do a thing, I get freaking nervous. I don't like that.
Right. It's diversification. You want to have some eggs in this basket and some in this one and some in this one. And so that way, when you pull from one, you still have these other ones left.
Right. Because as much as I don't trust the U.S. dollar.
Right.
It's still the law of the land
right now.
Yep. It's still liquid, super high liquidity. That's why we use it. That's why there's a term called the velocity of money, because it moves really quick. Silver does not move that quick. Doesn't mean I don't have silver, but it's Right now, I can take a little square of paper with my name and some numbers printed on it and sign my name to it and hand it to somebody, and it's the same as money, right? That's different than silver, right? Or livestock or firewood, right? And so I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I do. I don't empty my bank accounts, even though it makes me nervous to have money in them.
Right.
And it's this weird push-pull because it makes me nervous to have money in them, and I also don't want to spend the money, but I also understand that I should spend the money while I can.
Right.
And so, like, how does all that work? Emotional spending with Bear. Like, I don't know. A lot of that's feel, and that feel is based on intuition. What are my projected earnings going to be for the next, 3, 6, 12 months? How bad do I actually need this? Because I do that too. Like, oh my gosh, did you see Palmetto's daily deals? I don't need any of that.
Right.
Right? I can spend $400 at Palmetto or put that towards solar. Right? Or take my wife on a date.
Right.
So.
Prioritize.
Cool. All right. So that's the probably super long by now solar video.
Yeah.
Appreciate the question. Y'all have a blessed day.
Shalom.
Shalom. 31 minutes.
Oh, it wasn't that
Yeah, they'll make it.